Okay, so it is Thanksgiving Day in the United States, and it is 274 days that the Ukrainians have been defending themselves against the Russians. My name is Darren Gertis. I'm a professor. I've been tracking what's been going on since the early days of the war. I've been doing these daily updates, and I'm going to show you what is in the headlines and hopefully unpack some of what's behind the headlines. So here we go. We're going to start here. This was yesterday, not today. The EU Parliament website was attacked after members slammed Russian terrorism. So what happened was the EU Parliament voted to declare Russia a terrorist state. They clearly are. What you see in this picture are children who are amputees because of Russia. So when you're attacking civilian populations, hospitals, residential buildings, this is what it means to be a terrorist state. So the European Parliament website was hit by a cyber attack by pro-Russian hackers shortly after they declared Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism. They are joining North Korea and Syria and Iran as state sponsors of terrorism, and rightly so. Now, the EU Parliament is only the most recent in the long line of these, and is going to get longer. NATO did this a couple days ago. The PACE Parliamentary something of Council of Europe did it. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland. And I think there was one more whose lower council did. Our U.S. Senate has done it, but the State Department won't do it, and that's where it has to come from in the United States. Okay, Interfax Ukraine, victims of missile attack in Kyiv region reach 5 people, 4 multi-story buildings significantly damaged. When you're attacking apartment complexes, that is terrorism. As of now, it can be stated that 4 high-rise buildings were significantly damaged. A kindergarten and a school nearby were also damaged. 35 victims and a woman died this morning. That's terrorism. That's what it is. Ukraine's power system gradually recovering after 7th massive wave of Russian missile attacks. Ukrainian's power systems recovering. A target of yesterday's attack was mainly generation facilities, which led to a system failure and massive blackouts of consumers in Ukraine and Moldova. Now, this was what was interesting to me. The power system of Ukraine and Moldova is integrated and operates synchronously with the European continental grid. But it was interesting to me because of the next article, where the Europeans are going, well, what if we can hook up our power generation to your grid? So German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock has announced a meeting of foreign ministers of the G7 states in Bucharest next week where they'll discuss assistance to Ukrainian power systems. So that's really interesting development. Putin likes to plunge people of Ukraine into cold and darkness with his missiles. He will never break their desire for freedom or our support, Baerbock added. And I think that's absolutely right. If you look at what happened, so you cannot convince people to your point of view by missiles, right? Think about World War II and what the British were experiencing during the Blitz in London and Coventry and elsewhere. These are just pictures right out of Wikipedia from the Blitz. This is what was going on, and while this was going on, and like this is Liverpool after the bombing. I mean, it was decimated. The East End of London. This was part of, I think, London. And so when you see Coventry, when you see stuff like this, you're thinking, wow, that's really what happened? Yeah, that's really what happened. This was the Blitz. And there was greater morale in London because of it, because they were unifying, they were pulling together. This is what human beings do. So this is the kind of thing that backfires on your opponent. Okay, another article. Restoration of electricity, water supplies underway in Ukrainian cities. And I wanted to highlight these 2 paragraphs. Klitschko said about 70% of Kyiv still remained without electricity in the early morning, but power was restored in parts of the city within hours. 3 nuclear power plants still under Ukrainian control are being reconnected to the grid. The Russian military fired 67 cruise missiles and 10 drones during the day on 20th. So yesterday, that was 67 and 10, so it's 77 projectiles of some sort. The record, as I understand, was roughly 100. So this is a pretty, I mean, and they're just reducing their stock. They can't keep this up forever. And so that's what's going on, and that's what Ukraine is struggling under. Say it with me. Russia is a terrorist state. Okay, next. War crimes are part of Russians' war culture, says Ukrainian Nobel Peace Prize winner. So this lady is the head of an organization that jointly won the Nobel Peace Prize this year, and she's arguing that committing war crimes is part of the way that Moscow does business when they conduct war. War crimes are just part of it, and that's how they think, that's how they act. And that's why you see atrocities everywhere they go. Whenever there's liberated territory anywhere in Ukraine, that's part and parcel of what you see. We see that all these crimes have a systemic nature. That's exactly right, she said, and it's clear that this is not done by any specific unit of the Russian armed forces, but that it's part of the culture of how Russia conducts war. So that's a profound insight. And so if that's the case, what she argues is, just start doing your war crime tribunals now. Just like, you might as well get going. Don't wait for justice later on. We don't have to wait for Russia to lose. Why do we make people's demands for justice dependent on this? We must create an international tribunal now and begin all necessary procedures to bring Russian war criminals to justice. That's right. Now, she also admitted it's no small task, but that's part and parcel of how it works. Good on her for recognizing that that's what's going on. Okay, I wanted to before I get to fun with Russian media, say this. I think this is where the Ukrainians are. They have that same spirit that Britain adopted during World War II. Just, keep calm, carry on. And the idea here, like, they've just taken such a pounding day in, day out, and they go back and rebuild the next day. And it's just admirable to watch. And I'm really impressed by the way that the Ukrainians have conducted themselves. Okay, time for fun with Russian state media. So here we are. First article, Zelensky and the West make Ukrainian people experience the hardest winter of all times. I mean, it's almost hard to even fathom that somebody would write this, but this is what they're putting out on prav.ru. Yeah, that's right. It's the West to blame for the many missiles that Russia is now forced to send. I mean, if it wasn't for the West, they wouldn't have to do this, is the kind of thing that they're arguing. So I'm not even going to dignify the rest of what's in there. Next article, Zelensky plans to mobilize all Russian-speaking people to get rid of them on the battlefield. Okay, so there is this strain in the Russian psyche that is anything that's opposed to whatever Russia's doing is Russophobic. Now, there is some bad blood, admittedly, between the Ukrainians and the Russians, and related to the Ukrainian and Russian language, but yeah, that's not what's going on. So general and total mobilization is carried out only in the Russian-speaking regions of Ukraine, in Mykolaiv, and they list a number of other places here in the region. The agency said, with reference to the unnamed source, Zelensky's decree on mobilization does not apply to the western regions. Well, Russia's in the east. These more Russian-speaking regions are where the Russians are, and so there's a reason that you mobilize on this side of the country fully, and you won't necessarily mobilize on this side of the country that's bordering Poland, who they're not in any danger with. So, but it is put together in such a way that if you're a Russian reading this, you're thinking, see, that's what they're trying to do to them. And it's just so sad that this huge Russian population is either duped or has fled the country, or is just like, it's not me, I'm not involved, it's not affecting me. And that's what's really going on there. They just have this, it's just one of the major planks of the Russian propaganda platform. Okay, thank you for your time. Thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine and spending your time with me even when you don't have to. I appreciate it.